Hi, I'm Barbara Calvi, licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'd like to welcome you to the Couples Corner. Today I'm doing part 2 in my 5-part series on the healthy stages of relationship development. And these stages are developed by Ellen Bader and Peter Pearson at the Couples Institute, and this model of couples therapy is copyrighted by the Couples Institute. So today I'm talking about stage 2, the stage of differentiation. If you watched last week's video, then you know that stage 1, just to remind you, is the symbiotic stage, the stage where all the energy is focused on finding the similarities, on sharing inner thoughts and feelings, and being really spending energy building that sense of a strong bond, a we-ness, and a strong foundation that supports the relationship throughout the life of the relationship. So when you get to stage 2, the task in stage 2 is actually kind of the opposite. It's the stage of differentiation. It's the stage where couples have come together. They're together now for, maybe a couple of years, or there's been a significant commitment to the relationship, like you move in together, or there's a marriage. And sometime after that, people start to notice the differences. You're living your everyday lives, and conflict starts to arise. Now, it's not that literally in the first stage people thought, oh, my partner thinks and feels and wants exactly the same thing that I want in every single aspect. But there is this sense of we're on the same page about most things. And there's this strong bond. Well, here now that starts to get challenged, because the task here is to notice the differences, and to not just notice the differences, but start to learn how to negotiate and tolerate the differences. So in everyday life, conflict arises. The more fantasy there's been involved, and this is my soulmate, or this is the person who's going to take care of me and always be there for me and always soothe my anxieties, the often more complicated and challenging getting through the stages. So here is where members of couples need to develop the skills to negotiate those differences. Now, sometimes very early on in this stage, people will leave the relationship really abruptly, because as the symbiotic fantasy dissolves, they can't tolerate the idea that there are differences. It's too much for them, and they'll leave quickly to find the next relationship. Or they might leave because they're starting to notice the differences and they're okay with that, but the conflict that creates is too much for them, and not having the skills to really be able to handle or manage conflict in a productive way is overwhelming, and they might leave. So here people are defining themselves in the relationship, and they're about how they're different. So, and I think this is the most important task of any stage in any relationship, probably, is how you're going to develop the skills to manage the differences. Because ideally what happens when this stage is resolved well is you're finding ways to manage the conflict, finding ways to not only manage the differences, but support your partner's differences, even if it means they want or need something that you don't agree with, or they do things in a way that you don't want to do. Now, this stage goes wrong, or the stuckness shows up in the stage in a couple of different ways. One way is where partners will just try to avoid conflict at all costs. So they will start to try to anticipate their partner's moods, their partner's needs, their partner's wants. Anything that feels different or threatening to that, they will sweep under the rug. And this can drain the life and the vitality out of the relationship. There's a lot of mind reading, a lot of indirect communication, and a lot of fear in these kinds of relationships. The other way that the stuckness shows up is a lot of hostility and dependency. So differences start to turn into conflicts, start to turn into a lot of bickering. Bickering can come up almost around anything. And over time, that bickering really escalates into big explosive arguments, and there's a hostility throughout the relationship. Eventually, it can get to the point where almost every interaction, or often there's a sense of an attack on the other person, being attacked by the other person, and it's an attack to get them to pull them back into the sense of we-ness and sameness, and you really do agree with me. And there's a lot of the arguments revolve around right or wrong. Well, you have to do it this way because this is right. The way I think about it is the right way, and that's just wrong. Nobody does it that way. Who does that? Are expressions you might hear when a couple isn't entrenched in this stuck place in this phase. Again, the good news is when you understand that there are stages of development and you understand that this is actually a normal challenge to get to the next stage in it, then you know, oh, okay, it takes a lot of the fire out of it. And then the task is, how do I learn the skills to negotiate this and to develop this tolerance and the ability to do this? And that, again, a lot of this is going to be a reflection of what might have been incomplete in some of the early childhood influences. So stage 1 is the symbiotic stage, togetherness, strong foundation, which is extremely important to build. And then being able to get through stage 2 is about tolerating the differences, developing the skills to be able to support the differences and negotiate the conflicts. And so I want to invite you to join me next week when I talk about the stage 3 and the benefits and the challenges and the tasks of stage 3, the practicing stage. And until then, please take good care. Bye-bye.